The part where I'm less convinced of is the sort of ideological founding vision of Bitcoin or these cryptocurrencies as sort of a cypherpunk, crypto-anarchist, libertarian, anti-centralized government thing. The question is, does it really work that way? Or, has that thread somehow gotten lost? Maybe Larry Fink with the BlackRock ETF surrendered to the anti-ESG forces, or maybe it's more like Bitcoin's been co-opted.
Is Bitcoin losing sight of its cypherpunk and libertarian roots and slowly being co-opted by the very billionaire class that controls the current monetary system? Today, I dive into the erratic and contradictory positions of many billionaires when it comes to Bitcoin, as I attempt to unpack the most cogent critique the freedom money faces as it rises the ranks of its corporate adoption. Is Bitcoin still the sly roundabout way that'll lead us to a better system? Or could its fate be sealed by the very corrupt class that it purports to unseat? Billionaires have had a very interesting and sometimes confusing relationship with Bitcoin over the years. We have Jamie Dimon and his extremely public outright hatred for the digital asset.
Cryptocurrencies, there are two types. There's a cryptocurrency which might actually do something. And then there's one which does nothing. I call it the pet rock, the Bitcoin or something like that. There are use cases. AML, fraud, anti-money laundering, tax avoidance, sex trafficking. Those are real use cases. And you see it being used for hundreds, maybe $50 or $100 billion a year for that. That is the end use case. Everything else is people train among themselves.
All the while his company, JP Chase, is poised to take advantage of custodying Bitcoin when given the opportunity. Watch what they do, not what they say, right? Then we have the roller coaster of Elon Musk, who publicly supported Bitcoin in early 2021, even putting $1.5 billion worth on Tesla's balance sheet. But he quickly backtracked on his support, citing environmental and energy usage concerns. He then went on to sell 75% of Tesla's Bitcoin holdings at a loss. Paper hands. Then there's BlackRock's Larry Fink, who took perhaps the quickest and most blatant 180 on Bitcoin, when he went from being a very vocal skeptic to repeating all-out Michael Saylerisms.
Let's be clear, Bitcoin is an international asset. It's digitizing gold in many ways. Instead of investing in gold as a hedge against inflation or the devaluation of your currency, whatever country you're in.
Fink's BlackRock now holds over 350,000 Bitcoin on behalf of their customers in their iShares Bitcoin ETF. And then there's the curious case of Peter Thiel, who has been all over the place with his comments on Bitcoin. Thiel has gone from being one of its most well-known early proponents, like this clip from 2016.
The one other one that I've been looking at a lot more have been the cryptocurrencies, and while I'm skeptical of most of them, I do think people are a little bit are maybe underestimating Bitcoin specifically, because it's like a reserve form of money. It's like gold, and it's just a store of value. You don't actually need to use it to make payments. And it's been, there's about $70 billion worth of Bitcoin in the world. There's $9 trillion worth of gold. And if Bitcoin ends up being the cyber equivalent of gold, it has a great potential.
Then in April 2021, he warned against China using Bitcoin as a kind of weapon against the US dollar.
I do wonder whether at this point Bitcoin is also should also be thought in part as a Chinese financial weapon against the U.S., where it threatens fiat money, but it especially threatens the U.S. Dollar, and China wants to do things to weaken it. So it's sort of China is long Bitcoin, and perhaps from a geopolitical perspective, the U.S. should be a little bit be asking some tougher questions about exactly how that works.
This theory quickly proved false, as of 1 month later, in May 2021, the Chinese government banned Bitcoin mining within its borders. And the largest and fastest migration of Bitcoin hash rate fled from China to other countries around the world, the majority of which went to the United States. Thiel most recently has turned full-on bearish on Bitcoin, saying he doesn't expect it to go up much from here, and even expressed concerns over its original freedom ethos being lost, and perhaps even co-opted by BlackRock.
You sold any of your Bitcoin?
I still hold some. I didn't buy as much as I should have. I'm not sure it's going to go up that dramatically from here.
From here?
Yeah, I think we got the ETF edition, and I don't know who else buys it quickly from here.
That actually surprised me, because I don't think I've heard you. I thought you were still all in.
I still have a small position. It probably still can go up some, but it's going to be a volatile, bumpy ride. And I had a dual reason. One was this sort of ideological, decentralized future of computing, world that I really do believe in, really believe would be better. And it seemed like the perfect vehicle for that for such a long time. And I am just much less convinced of that. And so maybe Larry Fink with the BlackRock ETF surrendered to the forces, the anti-ESG forces, or maybe it's more like Bitcoin's been co-opted by them, and I worry it was more the latter.
Now, this is a critique I've heard a lot post-ETF approval, and the one I want to focus on in this video. If Bitcoin is supposed to be this freedom money that challenges the current financial system, why are Bitcoiners welcoming with open arms that very corrupt financial system from hoarding it? Doesn't that go directly against the original ethos? On the surface, this sounds like really compelling FUD, right? Well, this brings me to Whitney Webb and her recent appearance on Natalie Brunell's podcast. Whitney Webb is a widely respected independent journalist who has done some incredible work reporting on the depths of the corruption of the billionaire class and the governments that keep them in power. Have a look at what she has to say when being questioned about Bitcoin's ability to hold governments and billionaires more accountable.
How do you see, maybe in a positive way, Bitcoin holding the government more accountable or helping us move to a standard that is a little bit more fair and based on something that no one can manipulate or control? Or do you really worry that, the forces in power are going to make it such that privacy is pretty much impossible and everyone needs to custody with these centralized custodians so that they can kind of surveil and track your Bitcoin? Like, do you think that these forces are just going to clash and one's more powerful than other? Because we have the numbers, right? We're the people, but
yeah, well, I think the system they're setting up, I mean, the goal is to have the US dollar, Bitcoin, and stable coins all be part of the same ecosystem. And you see, prominent Bitcoin banks, as it were, like Zappo, marketing that they're the bridge between those three things, because the goal is to have those three things, all be part of the same system as it was essentially outlined by Trump's speech. As it relates to Bitcoin, I think that is not the answer. I think, if Bitcoin is the sound money, it should be what is transactable between people, and that robust privacy tools need to be built upon it. Because if the issue is surveillability, I think that needs to be tackled there. And I think, based on how this whole system's been described, the retail facing part of it would be the stable coins, and that people would just be holding but never transacting with their Bitcoin. But, there has to be consensus for that. And it seems like the establishment consensus, and there's a lot of people, in the Bitcoin space that are just, very caught up in the electoral politics and the emotions of it, and feeling validated for what, the industry they've been in for several years that's obviously not been favored by the establishment. Some people are maybe thinking, since the establishment is favoring this, let's cheer it on. But is it really the best system for everybody? And is it the best for financial freedom, and all of that? So I would urge people to consider, what is it that you want Bitcoin to be used for? Not just, well, again, there's some people that are hyper Bitcoinization at all costs. Doesn't matter if we totally abandon the original ethos behind Bitcoin and getting there. And I think there definitely are a significant amount of those people, but I don't agree with that. I think the ethos is very important. I think Bitcoin is unique, and it's really the only opportunity like this we're likely to have, at least in this, important window of time. And, people need to decide if they're going to use it to fight for those things, or if they're going to acquiesce to the system that's being set up and is going to be pushed on people, most likely through regulation and executive orders. And it's very likely that in the next 2 years, whoever wins in November is going to be president during an unprecedented US government debt crisis. And this is, if you already see it in Trump's policy, if he's in office, this is the system he's going to propose.
Now, there's a lot to unpack there. And of course, as always, Whitney speaks a lot of truth. In fact, I highly recommend you check out this full interview, as Natalie does a great job poking at Webb's position. And towards the end, there's a lot of juicy information of why Peter Thiel in particular should not be trusted when it comes to Bitcoin. Link to the full chat is in the description. Now, back to Webb's comments in this clip. First off, we as Bitcoiners can't stop the inevitable financialization of Bitcoin and the merging with the current fiat system. This was always inevitable. Bitcoin is a free and open protocol, meaning Bitcoiners can't do anything about BlackRock, Elon Musk, or the US government owning it. It has always had to be interoperable with the current system if it ever wanted to grow big enough to have the chance to unseat and become the best dominant money. And that's one thing I don't think Whitney is taking into consideration here, looking at Bitcoin through the lens of monetary history. For something to emerge as a dominant money, it first has to solidify itself as a superior store of value. Then, eventually, it becomes a medium of exchange, and finally, a unit of account. Bitcoin is still in the early stages of being widely accepted as a viable and superior store of value. This whole process of monetization could take 10, 20, or maybe even more than 50 years. We are still so incredibly early to its adoption. Don't be scared away of buying and supporting the very thing that will hold powerful people accountable because it's not perfect right now. Let the game theory play out, and the incentives will solve issues like usability and privacy over time. So no, the ethos of Bitcoin is not under threat and it is not being co-opted. Bitcoin has always been a Trojan horse for a better system. It is, as Hayek prophesized in the 80s, the sly roundabout way to introduce something governments can't stop. The fact that Bitcoin even exists is a miracle in and of itself. Complaining that Bitcoiners have lost sight of its original purpose is silly and futile. Bitcoin does not care what we think about it. The most important thing is to study this technology now and buy it and hold your own keys. This is why here at Swan we are so committed to self-custody. Much of Whitney's concerns can be shrugged off if more Bitcoiners just held their own keys and used it the way it was meant to be used, as a bearer instrument. Now, it's important to point out that of course Bitcoin will not end corruption itself. Humans are corrupt by their very nature. What it will do is remove the ability for the corrupt humans to control the money supply and rig the system in their favor. It levels the playing field by putting the monetary policy in the hands of mathematics and physics. God's laws, not sinful man's laws. Again, as Bitcoiners, we can't do anything about powerful people owning and hoarding Bitcoin. But unlike our current monetary system, where corruption is on the base layer, Bitcoin by its very nature resists corruption through the ethos written into the code itself by Satoshi. We already live in a world with rampant corruption. We are already slaves to a monetary system controlled by a select few. Bitcoin is our only viable path to a fairer, more equitable, and moral monetary system. So keep educating your loved ones on the benefits of it, and stop worrying about what Larry Fink, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and Donald Trump think of it, because Bitcoin will do what it's going to do regardless of what even the most powerful people want it to become. Honey Badger simply doesn't care. That's it for today. I'd love to hear what you think about all this. What do you tell people that say Bitcoin has been co-opted by the ruling class? Let me know in the comments, like this video, and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and have a great weekend.